Hi, I'm Chris Sadler, CEO and founder of Kimble Tech Limited. And this video today is for those who are interested in getting solar panels and want to know a little bit more information around the subject. Now, I've got loads of tips and tricks on things that you can do at the design stage, things for you to look out for, and things that you could do to improve your return on investment. We're going to go through obviously all of these tips and tricks, but also at the end, I've got some real life case studies that we can look at how customers have been using their solar and their battery. So really good, useful information, real-time information that you can use. So let's get cracking with the presentation. So unleashing solar potential, how to supercharge your return on investment. This is all about getting your money back as quickly and as profitably as possible, because for most people, that's why we're going into solar. So why solar panels? How is solar return on investment predicted? This is like how we do it. Cost of energy, energy consumption, and solar irradiance levels. These three things are how ROI is predicted. So we'll go through like how we sort of break those things down. We've got system strategy, how to improve your return on investment, break-even point. That's when effectively the time milestone when you get your money back. How to reach that sooner, and we're going to look at the real life case studies. So just before we go into that, just a little bit about who we are. So as I mentioned, I am the CEO and founder of Kimble Tech Limited. We've rebranded as Kimble Solar. We're an award-winning company based in High Wycombe. We specialize in renewable energy installations, so that's solar panels, battery storage, EV charge points, and generally speaking, we like to be in things renewable. So we're on the lookout for the next technologies, and we'll be expanding into those areas. And we've established in 2011 by myself, and the company's been growing nicely ever since. So on to why choose solar panels. So we really find there's three reasons why people come to solar. And the main one, right, is to reduce energy bills. That seems to be the biggest one, and can't blame you, right? The other thing is to ensure energy security. So this is where perhaps we're not too comfortable with the grid having the grip on us. If they increase energy prices, then we're at the mercy of that. So a lot of our customers want to have that security where they can generate as much of their own energy as possible, so they're not relying on the grid. And last of all, there's reducing carbon footprint. And sadly for me, this is the smallest category, but really for me personally, this is the biggest one. And that's why I've started Kimble Solar and why I've come on this journey. How is solar energy return on investment predicted? As I mentioned, there's three reasons: energy consumption, cost of energy, and solar generation. These three factors will play their part in predicting your return on investment. Let's look at cost of energy to begin with. So this graph here shows from January 2015 all the way through to January 2023. And as you can see, it's been fairly predictable through the late, so between 2015 and 2020. But by the time we get to 2021, as we know, things started to get a little bit unstable, and of course it's been shooting up and down. Now historically the energy prices have gone up and down. We've seen this at petrol stations when suddenly price of fuel increases and then it drops again. So the cost of energy is going to play a massive factor in how quickly you're going to get your money back. If the cost of energy is going to increase rapidly and go sky high, then of course if you're generating your own energy, you're going to get it back quicker. If the cost of energy drops, it's going to have the reverse effect. The thing about the cost of energy is it is unpredictable, so it is going to be difficult to say when you're going to get your return on investment. The only thing we've got to go on is if we look back over the, say, 40, 50 years, energy generally increases around about 4% in comparison to inflation, around about 3.5% to 4% per year. So we use that in our calculations, that year on year, you're going to just see a slight increase in the cost of energy. And that's, again, based over a 40 to 50 year period. The other thing that's going to change is your energy consumption. So moving on to point number 2. This is where you have to look at your, not just your usage now, but where you're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years time. Panel warranties go 25 years as a fairly standard warranty. And we see some that go to 30 years. Inverters and batteries, they're good for, most of them have 10 years as their warranty. And so really with the solar system, we're looking at a 30-year product here. And what's your energy consumption going to be like in 30 years time or over that 30-year period? It's going to change massively. So when we try to predict how much energy you're using, we have to sort of look at least 5 years ahead, possibly 10 years, and really try and map out this is what we do. We map out the next 10 years for you and think, what's going to change? Have you got children who are about to go to university and flee the nest? Are their children going to be coming back from university and living with you again for many years? Are you a young couple who's about to maybe have kids, or have you retired? And so all of these things are going to change your consumption, but not just like who's going to be in your home, but also what you may or may not be using. So the first one on the screen here is household appliances. Air fryers, right? These have just come into fashion. I haven't got one yet, but I'd like to get one. But air fryers seem to be the in thing at the moment. And this is obviously changing how you use your energy. I've covered people in the home already, so that's we've done that one. But heat pumps, electric vehicles, electric boilers, we are going to see a shift of how you heat your homes. And electric boilers are one way, heat pumps are another, but these all use electricity in order to get your heating. So again, are you likely to be changing your boiler in the next 5 to 10 years? The answer is probably yes. So that's something that we need to think about. Electric vehicles as well. For most people, it's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. You will have an electric vehicle, if not sooner. Outbuildings. This is, again, something we're seeing a lot recently. The last few years is becoming more and more common that people are having their, I think from working from home more than anything, this is becoming more and more common that people work from home and they need their office space. So we are seeing a lot of people having their own man caves or remote offices in their gardens being built. And again, this is a space that needs heating, and it also means you're going to be there throughout the day with computers plugged in and perhaps boiling the kettle a few times with making your cups of tea and coffees. So the other thing we're noticing is that there is a rise in people wanting luxuries like hot tubs and saunas. And this is another question that you have to ask yourself. Are you likely to want to expand on your existing setup and take on such luxuries? This will all play, these things need heating that's going to take up a lot of energy. So, and what time of day is it going to take up the energy? That will help to determine what size solar system you should get, what size battery system should go with it as well. And last of all, we've got on here is the lifestyle and circumstance. So changes in perhaps your work. If your job changes, you might find yourself suddenly working from home more often or going to the office more often. So if you know what your lifestyle circumstances are going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years, then of course we can start to factor that in as well. Solar generation this is the third point. And actually of all of them, this is probably the most predictable, okay? The UK weather, despite its unpredictability over a 11-year cycle, is actually quite predictable. So if you look at this diagram here, this chart, it goes back to 1980 all the way through to 2022. Every 11 years, it sort of dips up and down. But if we're looking at a 30-year product, I mean, that's 3 solar cycles. And actually, if you look at the line here, it doesn't rise over time or go up or down. So if we're looking over 30 years, it's actually quite predictable, the UK weather. Go figure. Okay, so they are the 3 reasons, and we take those 3 components, we do the best we can at predicting all 3 of them, and we put it together, and that generates your return on investment. Okay, moving on to system strategy. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 3 main reasons why you would go into solar. Now, the first one is to reduce your energy bills. What's the strategy if you want to reduce your energy bills? In this case, it's to optimize return on investment. And by doing that, we want to design the solar system to hit the sweet spot. And I'm going to go into what the sweet spot is in a minute. So this is where every penny you spend will bring you the best return on investment for that amount. So that's the strategy for reducing energy bills. The next thing is energy security. And the strategy here is basically go big. Okay, the more solar panels you have, the more security you have. It's as simple as that. The only thing is, of course, that is going to generally push spend up. So often that strategy, people tend to go back to the return on investment strategy. And the third thing is reducing carbon footprint. And for reducing carbon footprint, in this case, anything helps. If you get 1 solar panel, you're already doing better than having none. Yeah. If you go for 10 panels, 20 panels, 30 panels, if you go for more panels than you need, then you're going to start exporting to the grid, and that means you're helping the greater good. If you only have enough to do what you need to do, that's brilliant. Even if you only got enough to do 10% of what you're doing, you're still reducing your carbon footprint. So really, that becomes you just have to decide how much money you want to put down to reducing your carbon footprint. Anything helps. Now, I'll turn to doing a bit of doodling. And so if you take a look at this drawing here, or this graph here, this is typically how we see the cost of a system weigh up against the annual savings that you can expect from that system. Now I'm going to start drawing on here. Please do excuse my handwriting because it's not the greatest with an iPad pen. Right, so first of all, on the horizontal axis here, we've got the cost of the system. So the more expensive systems are over here, and the lesser cost systems are over here. Now on the vertical axis, we've got annual savings. So here we've got little savings, and up here we've got big savings. I'm just going to take them off so it makes it clearer again. Right. What we tend to find here, this black curve that you can see here, this is typically the curve that we see when we are pricing up systems. Now, let's take, for example, a system that doesn't cost too much, like down here, for example. And I'm going to use a ruler for this, you know. So here is our system, which comes up to this price point here. And in return, you're getting a pretty low return on investment. Here we go. This is your return on investment. If you were to perhaps increase the cost of the system to maybe just pay not a great deal more, but instantly we are now coming up to where it meets the line. We've now, just by doing a small increase in the cost of the system, we are now making a big increase in our annual savings. So here is where we want to find out, what can we do, what small things can we do that's going to increase the system cost, but then really, really impact our annual savings, give us the best return as possible. Now, let's say you then say, do you know what, I want to spend a little bit more on my system. Well, that's good. So let's say we go again and we spend again. And of course, you're going to get another return on investment, which is, again, you've really pushed the savings up. Now, this part here is where you have to say, is that worth the extra increase? And of course, by the time we get to this price point here, you're going to have to say, is that an amount you're willing to invest in? But now here's the point we have to be careful of. And I'm going to do this in red because it says, no, I'm going to do it in green. Sorry, I'm going to do it in green. So let's say we're going to spend some more on our system. We're really loving spending money on our solar system because we can see the return on investment and we want to spend that little bit more. So now we come up to this point, and as you can see, guess what? We are going to make more savings. However, the amount of saving we're now making has actually decreased. So really, spending that bit more, we're only getting then that little bit more out of it. And then we've basically passed the point of break even, or past the point, we're in the point of diminishing returns. So the more you spend on your solar system, you're only going to start to see small increases. So I'm going to put a red dot on this one here. Really, our best return on investment point is here. This is the sweet spot. And that's really the bullseye. That's where what we're trying to hit. So when we're doing your predictions, if it's return on investment or supercharging your return on investment, it's the red dot. That's where we want to be getting to. And really, if you do want to spend a bit more, we'll certainly see that you'll increase your annual savings. Now, the blue area, this blue area. So from here to here, from here to here. This is your ROI band. This is looking really messy now, so I do apologise if this is offending anybody. And then after that, if it's all about energy security, and this is where you want to go bigger, then I would say that this is the green area, this is your energy security. There you go, ES. So it's going just beyond the point of return on investment, but it's where you're willing to spend that little bit more to improve on your annual savings. And then, of course, the third thing is reducing your carbon footprint. And of course, for me, that means you could be anywhere on this graph, because whatever you spend, you are going to get money back on it, but you are going to reduce your carbon footprint. So hopefully all those scribbles didn't bamboozle you too much. All right, I'm going to move on now to how do I positively impact return on investment? What are the tips you can do? Adding a battery, for me, this is a no-brainer. The battery you will need, and I'll show you later on in the case studies. Why is the battery important? Well, because when your panels are generating solar energy, they're usually generating more than you need because you don't necessarily need it in the daytime, and they're producing way more than you need. And then suddenly when you do need it, it's usually in the evening, and that's when the sun's gone down and your panels aren't performing anymore, and then you need that energy. And that is obviously the biggest reason why you would need a battery. But on top of that, there's also throughout the day, you're going to get times when your solar panels are only producing a small amount of energy, but they're slowly topping up your battery. And then when you suddenly need that rush of energy, because the battery's been topped up, it can now deliver the amount of energy you need. So when you pop the kettle on, suddenly the battery can fill your needs. So batteries are proven as a really good way to impact your return on investment. Maximizing panel grouping. Now, if you're at a stage where you're looking at your roof and you're thinking, where can I put my panels? You probably already know a panel is roughly 1 meter wide by about 2 meters tall. Not quite those dimensions, but as a rough sizing guide. If you can get them all together so that they are in a nice grid and they're bunched up in a nice square or rectangle, that is the most effective way for you to get a good return on investment. If you start splitting them onto separate roof faces or having to leave gaps or change orientations, all of those things start to slow down the installation process, and they can have a negative effect on your return on investment. So where possible, get them all grouped together. And I apologise if I haven't covered this already, but south facing is the roof space you want to be on. So if you're stood looking at your house, which roof faces south, that's the roof you want to be on. If you've got your house is pretty much west and east facing, then of course either of those is a good option for you. Again, there's a reason why you might choose east over west, or do both if you can. And to positively impact your return on investment is factoring your 10-year plan, which I covered earlier. And by doing that, it means you're getting a very realistic view on what your energy consumption is going to look like over the next 10 years. So you're designing the system to meet your demand. Break-even point. So the break-even point is when your electricity bill savings and your smart export guarantee payments have met the cost of the installation. So smart export guarantee is when the grid will pay you money to export electricity. Before we had battery storage, this was quite important because you would always be exporting. Anything you didn't use, you exported. So if you could get paid for that energy that you're exporting, then it's really going to help improve your break-even point. Now that we've got battery storage and ways of using the energy at source, export guarantee payments aren't as important, and generally the rate is quite small, but there are some good tariffs out there, and if you are quite clever with your choice of tariff, you can get yourself you can find yourself some tariffs that will pay you, reward you very well for exporting, especially exporting at certain times of the day. So when your electricity bill savings and the payments you're going to get from your smart export guarantee, once you add them together, when that meets the cost of the installation, then that is your break-even point. And this here is an example of one of the jobs that we've priced up. And you can see over here, the cost of the installation was around about £20,000. Over 20 years, their net saving is going to be £62,000. And what this means is the payback was calculated at around 7 years and 5 months. So this is just a typical installation, an example of how that might look. There we go, typical example taken from a client's quotation pack. How can you reach break-even point sooner? So this isn't things that you can necessarily do after having it installed, but this is certainly things you can start to, or tips that you can implement or make sure that you have included in your quotation package. So when you're shopping around for solar, these are things that could really help you achieve break-even point sooner. Adding bird proofing. Birds, or particular pigeons, are the nemesis of solar panels. They like to nest underneath the panels, and when they do that, they then like to hang around outside the solar panels. They like to peer on the edges of, or perch themselves on the edge of the solar panels, and then they create a lot of mess. When they create mess, it makes shading, the panels underperform, and your system, your ROI just disappears. So adding bird proofing is a great way to stop the pigeons from nesting there in the first place. They're going to go nest somewhere else. They're going to hang around over there. They're not generally going to hang around on your roof anymore. So that is the number one reason for adding bird proofing. There is argument that it helps reduce, stop other pests from getting in there. Nests themselves can create a bit of a heating issue. They can gnaw at the cables, things like that. So there are other benefits, but the main benefit is definitely keeping the pigeons away and stopping them from messing on your panels. Panel maintenance, following on. If you can keep your panels clean, you are going to get the best out of them. It's as simple as that. Now, generally speaking, panels are self-cleaning. They do have, especially if they are at a 30 or 45 degree angle, generally with the rainwater, it will help to keep them clean. If you've got a flat roof system or panels at a very shallow angle, then you definitely want to be cleaning them ideally annually at the least, ideally maybe every 6 months, or ultimately check your app, keep checking in on your app, make you see how you're generating, try and have a reference so you know what you maybe should be generating, and keep inspecting them, have a look at them. If they look dirty, get them cleaned. You can see here a nice long brush with a hose pipe. As long as it is nothing too abrasive, then usually just water and a soft broom is all that's needed. Keep trees and bushes trimmed. So again, trees and bushes, they generally create shading or can create shading on the panels, and shading again will massively underperform your system. Something I haven't covered yet, but generally speaking, most panels they're done in what we call strings. So the way the string works is, think of it like a single hose pipe. If you create a kink anywhere in that hose pipe, then the water will just stop flowing. And solar panels are very much, they work in a similar manner. The solar panels are in strings, so that they're in series, they're in a long line. If one panel has a bit of shading on it, it's like squeezing the hose pipe, and suddenly the energy just stops flowing through them. So even if one panel was shaded and 10 panels weren't, you're going to get the whole system performing at the shaded panels level. So it's going to massively underperform. So that's why it's really important if you can keep trees and bushes trimmed. So as we know, they tend to, hedges especially, tend to get taller and taller over time. And if you know, after a couple of years, you might look out and go, actually, I didn't realize, but my panels are now in shade because I didn't trim my trees and keep them locked down. So yeah, that is that one. Add optimizers. So to do this, to retrofit optimizers is doable. It's obviously great if you can get it in there at the very beginning, but optimizers will just help with the shading issue and help if any panel does underperform. So that's whether the panel might break down without you knowing about it, if a panel does get a load of debris on it, or if there is a shading issue. So optimizers will help to remove any of the negative effects of that and allow the rest of the array to perform at its optimum. Okay, so the next thing you could do is install an electric vehicle charge point. Now, I just want to give you sort of like the strategy here. The strategy is generally don't export the energy. If you can use your solar energy direct at source, that is the best thing you can do. So when it's generating, if you can use that directly, so put the washing machine on, or run the oven when that's running, then brilliant. That is the best thing you can do. The second best thing you can do is store it into an energy source where you can get it back out again. So therefore, your home battery, you can store the energy into that easily, and you can get it back out again when you need it to. If you can't do that, or your battery's full, then what? Does the energy go out to the grid? No. If you've got an electric vehicle charge point, you can take that energy and you can put it into your vehicle. Now, this particular electric vehicle charge point is a Zappi, and there are other brands out there as well, or other models that will do solar charging. And what it is, it basically listens for when you're exporting energy, and then it turns the car on. It will charge the car up at the rate that you're exporting. So effectively, you're taking all of that energy and you're putting it into your vehicle. And again, that's the best way for you to get your break-even point, achieve that point sooner. So there is a bit of a misconception at the moment where you can power your home from your vehicle. Now, this is called vehicle to grid, and it is going to come eventually, but it's still in its infancy. So we won't hold fire for that one at the moment, but certainly being able to charge your vehicle from your solar panels, that's absolutely happening right now, and you should be doing it. Right, the next thing we've got is hot water diverters, and the product I've shown here is an eddy, which is also made by Myenergi, the same people that make the Zappi. So Myenergi are a British company, and they have a full range of batteries, inverters, EV charge points, and these hot water diverters. So what happens is the eddy will monitor the grid to see if you're exporting any energy. Now, if you are losing energy to the grid, then instead it will divert that energy into your hot water cylinder and heat up your hot water. Now, typically your gas boiler would be doing heating up your hot water cylinder, but if the eddy's doing that job in the daytime, then typically when you get to the early evening, which is when most people would fire up their hot water cylinder and get the gas boiler going, well, it shouldn't need to do that then, because it's already up to temperature, and that way then you're not burning gas to heat your hot water. So it's a very effective product in the summer, and certainly some days in the winter you'll find that your eddy will kick in, especially if it gets really nice sunny days. The eddy will kick in and you'll have a lovely tank of hot water for free. So we've mentioned battery storage already, but what I really want to do is lead on to something called arbitrage. Now, this is where you can charge your batteries at night time using low cost electricity, and then use that battery power in the daytime instead, when it would have otherwise cost you a lot of money. So for those of you that don't know, there are time-based tariffs, and Economy 7 was one of the first ones that rewarded you for using electricity at night time, and it did that by making the cost of electricity very cheap. And then in the daytime, it would otherwise be a little bit more expensive. So it was in your interest to buy the electricity, or to use it or store it as much as you could at nighttime, and then use that throughout the day. Now, historically, they did that using like storage heaters, and also using the hot water cylinders, ways that you could store heat, that you would then dissipate that heat throughout the day. But now things have moved on and we've got the technology. Batteries are the way that we can do that. So there are tariffs now, very intelligent tariffs, that will give you a narrow window at night time when you can charge up your batteries. And this can be from 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, usually up to about 7 hours. And there are so many tariffs out there, so you have to do a bit of shopping around to find out which one suits you best. But especially since we've had people getting electric vehicles, there are a lot of tariffs that will give you 4 hours of charging overnight. And you can do the same with your batteries. You can charge it up using a really, really low cost unit price for your electricity, and then use that in the daytime. You just got to be mindful that you have a big enough battery to do this. You see, the downside of switching to a time-based tariff is that although at night time the price of electricity will drop, but the difference is in the daytime, it usually becomes more expensive. So there is a trade-off when you do this. You've got to make sure that you've got plenty of battery storage, that you can really charge them up, get them nice and full at night, so you've got plenty to see you throughout the day. If you've only got a small battery, then of course it's only going to be able to store a small amount of charge. And so make sure you've got a big battery so you can do that at night, and then you've got plenty of electricity to see you through the next day. If you've only got a small battery, so this is something to think about when you do decide on getting solar and what size battery to get, then just think about the arbitrage option, because you will need a sizable battery, which will cost more money than if you were just get yourself a real small solar enabled battery. So this is something to bear in mind when you are selecting your solar system or the size of battery you want to go with. If you have a large battery, you can definitely make full use of the arbitrage, and you've got the energy to last you throughout the day. But if you only go for a small battery, it will keep your system costs down, but you won't really be able to use this arbitrage option effectively. So that is something that you need to think about, and ideally ask your solar provider to give you 2 illustrations, one with a small battery where it is just solar charge only, and one with a large battery where you can leverage a time-based tariff and make full use of the arbitrage option. And the last thing is smart export guarantee. So this is where you get paid to export energy. Now, typically, it's not that rewarding. You only get a couple of pence per kilowatt hour. So generally speaking, it's not something that we particularly go after. However, if you shop around, you might find that there are some tariffs that will reward you quite handsomely for exporting at a certain time of day. Now, it doesn't tend to be that if you just export at any time of day, they'll give you loads of money for it. That doesn't tend to happen. But what they will do is they tend to be quite generous if you export between 4 and 7 in the evening. So between 4 and 7, that's typically when your solar panels are coming to the end of the day. So they're not really going generate a great deal. But if you've got a nice amount of battery storage, you can program your battery to discharge at that time and reward you for exporting. So there are some tariffs out there. You can get quite clever with it. It does sound very complicated. I'm not going to lie, it is a bit complicated. But if you do like that sort of thing, there are ways you can really leverage smart export guarantee and arbitrage and actually make your system work really well for you. So all of these sort of things, if you factor it all in, you can actually get yourself a really good break-even point. Right, I'm going to move on now and show you some real case studies. Okay, these are systems that we've installed, and I've chosen three. I've chosen three sort of different scenarios, different demographics, and I hope that by you seeing this data, it's just a bit of an insight for you. There's no particular goal here other than for you to see what the actual data looks like. So without further ado, I shall move on to case study number one. So this study is a professional couple. They work in an office, so they're not at home in the daytime. We've installed 14 panels. It's 5.7 kilowatts hours of battery storage. The cost of the system was 16,600. We predicted their break-even time would be 9 years, and their usage was 5,200 kilowatt hours per year. We estimated their solar generation would be 4,900 kilowatt hours, and the estimated savings over 20 years was going to be £40,000. First of all, I'm going to show you their load profile, and you can see that around about 9 in the morning, I think that's when they probably pop the kettle on. Maybe that's when they're heading out. Looks like they didn't have much else for breakfast. Maybe that was the toaster that went on. And throughout the whole day, nothing's going on. There's just a little bit of background here. All of this usage here is like a fridge or a freezer just running in the background. There's not really a great deal going on. And it's not until around about 9:20, clearly they get home, they probably pop the kettle on. And then from here, from around about 8 o'clock, it looks like they must be cooking dinner, perhaps put the washing machine on. And generally speaking, that's all their uses in the evening. Now, the solar generation here, you can see all of that is done in the daytime. So it's when they're not there. So this one here is an absolute no-brainer. You need to get a battery. And this here, the green, is the battery. This is the level of battery storage. Now, right here at the beginning of the day, they start at 32%, so that's at midnight. Throughout the day, throughout the morning, this is like overnight, so all the way through till 8 in the morning, it's now at 19%. So they've used about 10% of their battery storage throughout the night. And around about 8 in the morning, it starts to go back up again. And by 10 o'clock, by 10:25, they're pretty much fully charged again. And that's because they're not using any electricity. And the solar's kicked in, it's charging up the battery. And you can just see here, this tail off here is just because it doesn't want to, when batteries get to about 95%, they'd like to slow really, for battery conditioning, they like to charge slowly. So by midday or by 1:30, the battery's at 100%. And actually you can see here now, this brown here, this is the feed in. So actually they spent most of the day feeding in. So despite having a 5.7 kilowatt hour battery, they were actually spent a lot of the day feeding in. So just focusing on the battery storage here, you can see that at about 7:20 when they arrived, they put the kettle on, ran their washing machine, and that's when they dissipated the battery throughout the evening. And actually by about 9:30, they had fully dissipated the battery down to 10%. It's just a maintenance level of charge there, 11%. And you know, they could have definitely done with more battery storage on this day, but we have to balance the system out over the lifetime of it. So because this was a great day in May, great day for solar generation, they obviously fill the battery up quickly. But then there's other days when they wouldn't necessarily need that amount of battery, or it certainly wouldn't have helped their return on investment by spending more money on more batteries. So I'm going to move on to case study 2. This is a retired couple. They had 7 panels installed and a 2.9 kilowatt hour battery. Quite a small system. The system cost £10,300. We predicted their break-even time would be 13 years. Their usage per annum is 2,000 kilowatt hours. So this is quite low usage. And when you have low usage, it's very difficult to get a good return on investment or a fast break-even point. So for them, 13 years was the best that we could do. and their estimated solar generation was 2,800 kilowatt hours per year. So even with 7 panels, which doesn't sound like a lot, that was more than what they needed for an annual use. And we predict that over the 20 years, they will make a saving of 21,300. So here is the profile, the load profile for the retired couple. And it looks like in the morning, they just use there's a small peak around about 7:35. Potentially that's just the boiling the kettle or coffee machine. And then it's not until around about lunchtime when they start to use. So that's probably coming back for lunchtime. I would guess that they popped out in the morning, did a bit of shopping, came back and then cooked their lunch at lunchtime. And then again, probably popped out for the afternoon, came back around 6 o'clock and again, maybe used the oven at that point, the microwave perhaps. And then just a little bit of increased usage here. That's possibly running a TV or just something that would have, you can see here in the evening, it's just slightly higher than it was throughout the night. So again, fairly minimal usage. This is why they only use 2,000 units per year, because they generally have quite low usage. Now, in terms of the battery, it was a very, very small battery that they had. But actually, when you look at this profile now, they start at midnight, it starts fairly full at 84%. And they actually do a top up. They do use Arbitrage on their system. So they do top it up at 1 in the morning, and that's why they start the day with the battery full. But throughout the night and we get to about 8 o'clock in the morning here, it dissipates down to 53%. So even though this is a small battery, they're still only getting down to 50% before the solar tops it all back up again. So it's quite interesting that even a small battery, they're still working within the limits of it. And you can see throughout the day, it goes up to 100%, it drops down a bit when they need it, and the solar is topping it back up to 100% again. And right down here at 9 o'clock in the evening, that's when the battery gets the minimum, and then that's when their nighttime tariff kicks in, and then they charge it back up again. So for them, actually, they're really making good use of a small 2.9 kilowatt hour battery. That's the solar curve here. So this is typically what you can find from the generation. It's very spiky, so this would have been a day when the clouds were probably coming in and out throughout the day. So we've got a bit of a rise and a fall. But you can see, generally speaking, from about 6 in the morning through to 6 in the evening, it's a fairly consistent curve that goes up and down, peaking around about midday. And again, this was taken in June, so but a shady day in June when the sun was coming in and out. In terms of feeding in, looks like they actually did a bit of feeding in, but not particularly great amount. Around about midday when the battery's full, they found themselves feeding in a small amount. So again, that's a bit of insight into a retired couple that got low usage and typically how a small system works well for them. This is a young family of 4. Their kids go to school, but the mum stays at home. They had 10 panels installed and 11.4 kilowatt hours of battery storage. The cost of the system was £16,000. The break-even time we predicted is 7 years. Their usage per annum was 5,000 kilowatt hours, and the estimated solar generation was 3,900 kilowatt hours. We estimated that they would save £58,000 over the course of 20 years. So first of all, this is their load profile. And again, you can see that throughout the day, I guess at around about 6:55, that's when the first load goes on. That's probably the husband putting on the coffee machine. And we've got 8 o'clock here, another peak. That's probably the toast going in the toaster for the kids' breakfast. And then what have we got here? Around 10:30 in the morning, we've got for about an hour, there is a pool load there. That's probably the washing machine going on, washing all the kids' clothes. And here we go, we've got a few little blips throughout the morning. And then really when it gets to lunchtime, again, oven goes on, there's obviously lunch being cooked, possibly another washing load going on as well, the tumble dryer. And then just throughout the day, there's lots of little peaks where potentially kettles going on. This is 3:35, that's when the kids get back from school. Guess what? Kettle's probably gone on again. And just here we go, 4:40 and 4:40, around 4:40, 5 o'clock. Again, we've got another load going on for a prolonged period of time. That's probably the oven. So this family, throughout the day, they're using the energy, but it's in spikes. It drops down to, down to around about 200 watts. and then it peaks up to around about 3 kilowatts throughout the day, all the way through to the evening. And the last spike is around about 9:30. Perhaps that was, again, maybe just a nice cup of tea just before bed. So that's the load profile. Now, if I overlay the solar on that, you can see that the solar in itself is very peaky as well. And this was taken in June, and very sort of peaky. You can see that it peaks and then it drops down again. So again, this was a day when there was probably a lot of cloud cover and the sun just came out for a few spells. And if you really look here, I want you to pay attention to the yellow graph and the blue graph, and how one peaks at one time and then the other one peaks at another time. So they never actually, or they rarely peak at the same time. And this is where you need that battery. The battery will give you the energy when you need it and store it when you don't need it. And the green curve here is the battery level. And you can see they start at midnight with the battery at 78%, and it only drops down to around 68% before they start to use it in the morning. But because they've got the solar energy, it's generally holding around 90% for most of the daytime. And then they finish the day, after all of that, they finish the day at 66%. So they're almost finished the day where they started. So this system is very well balanced for them. They've got a bit of, the battery size obviously looks like it might be on the larger size here, but they've actually now got a big battery that they can use for arbitrage in the winter time, which is the reason for them going for it. So I hope that's been really helpful for you. Lots of little tips and tricks in there. If you do have any questions, we are always available for a consultation. I'm a bit of a solar geek, so I do love to talk about all things solar. I imagine there's been a little bit of an information overload there, so please do get in touch. We can answer your questions. We're based in High Wycombe. Kettle's always on, biscuits always in the biscuit jar. Contact details are on the screen. Like I said, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Sadler. It's been a pleasure.